Just as a reminder, you can visit us at thepandapod.com. That's thepandapod.com to grab our RSS feed, listen directly, and share PandaPod with your family and friends. You can also reach us directly via email through podcast@thepandapod.com. Thanks for listening. Hey everybody, welcome to the Panda Pod. I'm your host Wiggy, and we have with us Jeff and Rab today.
Hello.
Hey there.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about billionaires. You could also claim that this may be our Eat the Rich episode. So we're going to go ahead and start off by asking a couple questions, and we'll kind of get into it. So my question for today is, who is your least favorite billionaire and why? I've been starting off with Jeff recently, so this time I'm gonna switch it up and we're gonna go with Rab. So Rab, who's your least favorite billionaire and why?
Yeah, so I think probably, at least out of the ones that I know about, have a public persona, Bill Gates. And why is, well, he's involved in a lot of stuff. I mean, obviously Microsoft has some pretty scummy practices, but there's a lot more to what he does with his outreach. For instance, he's really involved in like privatizing public schools. That's a big initiative of him. Or actually, really, it's more like replacing public schools with charter schools, right? Obviously, no one's talking about selling off public schools to private companies or anything like that, but trying to supplant them with charter schools is a big thing that he does.
So why are you against that point so much? What's the big gripe that you have with that?
Well, I mean, I think that one of the last unions that we have in this country that's actually kind of strong, at least, I mean, most of them are individual state unions, but it's teachers unions, right? And a lot of, I mean, the part of the reason the charter schools are being pushed is because those staff are not unionized. They're not required to join a teachers union or even have the option to potentially.
Yeah, see how that could be a problem. When you privatize like that. I mean, they would have the option of doing that and creating a new one. However, there is already a proper union in effect with public schools, and they're already established. It's quite difficult to get a new union off the ground.
Right. And I mean, and the schools will ultimately be accountable to, no one, even less than they are now, right? I mean, as bad as it is with like schools being accountable to like mothers against Harry Potter books or whatever, even worse than that these days. I still feel like it's probably preferable to them being accountable to the likes of Bill Gates.
I feel like charter schools are disproportionately like inaccessible to like minorities as well.
Yeah, that's
There's
interesting.
something about like the lottery system that in like how those are divvied out or something like that.
Yeah, a lot of the way that it works is that they'll like issue um, like vouchers
Right. Yeah.
instead the states do that kind of give equivalent funding to the charter schools, right? But then they're technically public schools, but or sorry, I guess like they technically have to accept all of the students, but they can run it in a way that can be discriminatory, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and not to mention that they also disproportionately get more money from the state than the public schools do per capita student. The class sizes are smaller. because they don't accept as many students, and they also get more money than public schools most of the time. And so they're able to, I mean, you could say that there's a benefit on that side, but what you're really doing is making sure a lot of kids don't get a proper education, and you're catering to the few who, whether or not it's through connections or of their parents or whatever the case may be, they're getting a much more specific education and more direct time with a teacher, which is definitely unfair.
Well, I mean, I guess there's private schools and there's charter schools, and I think that ultimately, Bill Gates probably doesn't care about touching the existing private school structure, right? It's more about like gutting the funding that's going to public schools by replacing it with a privatized version.
Right. And I mean, you don't have that government oversight of what can be taught as well, right? If it's privatized like that?
So private schools generally have to follow a more strict um, schedule of what they're teaching closer to public schools. But with charter schools, they definitely get around that and are able to teach some types of classes that you would not normally get access to in a public school. Yeah, for sure.
Well, that's one thing. There's also like I think Bill Gates is now the largest private owner of farmland. Did you know that?
Yeah, I had heard that. Yeah.
So that's another development. I mean, I guess that probably hasn't had quite as much time to develop like into what is he doing with the farmland, but it seems scary.
Well, it also makes you wonder because I mean, the government has been on a spree of paying farmers not to farm. And so the question becomes what is the percentage of Gates's farmland that's actually being utilized versus not being utilized? Like, is he the one that's making more money off of the farmland because he's able to actually produce goods versus
I mean,
other
you have
farmers?
to
Yeah,
assume
you'd have to
that he
assume.
is making
Yeah,
money.
you'd have to
Yeah.
assume that. So the question becomes: is the government paying whatever that low flat rate is to independent farmers, and then letting people who own gigantic swaths of farmland continue to farm and make bigger profits and create scarcity, um, so that prices are higher?
Or
Well,
is
that is a
is
conspiracy theory that I am not privy to.
That was just me
I
making
was
up
gonna
some
say,
stuff. So
sure. Yeah, I mean, the alternative is that maybe Bill Gates is sitting on a bunch of farmland and getting paid not to farm it, and that's the whole plot. Like he's collecting the
That's his
government
retirement
subsidies.
plan.
yeah, for sure,
I'm
definitely.
getting this huge new industry of not farming. It's a great job.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder. I mean, do you only just have to own some land to get in on that, or is there requirements of like you have to actually have like so many cows or pigs or something? Like, what's
Right.
the? I mean, can I just buy some land and get paid for owning land? Is that how it goes?
I think with some of this stuff, it's they still produce it, but they're paid to not put it onto the market because they don't want there to be like a sudden oversupply, I guess.
Yeah, which if that's the case, that kind of drives me nuts because there's
Yeah.
so much good you could do with that extra food. And like it still be paid, like if you're going to pay for people to literally toss the food that they create, why aren't we just giving it to communities or other countries that are in food scarcity? Like why aren't we doing that with the extra food that we produce?
Well, I think
Yeah.
the reason for that is that the transportation of those produce is such a huge part of the cost of the produce, and that when you pay them to just they have to grow, because if you don't grow, you're not replenishing your soil. You can't just let it sit. You have to keep growing. And if it's cheaper for them to just grow it and then pitch it than it is to grow it and then distribute it to people who need it. I know that's shitty, but I mean, I would think that is the reason why they do that.
Yeah, I guess the transportation, but I mean, we have food that comes from all over the globe, so I feel like the transportation could be solved if there was, willpower and it wasn't making so much money to do it the other way.
So I know that there's another um, thing that Gates has been accused of, and that's the medical tampering scenario. Is that also
Oh,
something
right,
that
yeah,
you're
like
upset about?
yeah, I didn't think about that. He's hugely involved in the preventing the release of the COVID vaccine. Like if it wasn't for Bill Gates lobbying, it's possible that we would have the COVID vaccine being produced by third world countries instead of just having to be purchased from our huge pharmaceutical companies. Is that what you're referring to?
I mean, yeah, yeah, definitely. There's also all of the testing that took place. I'm not quite sure on the timing. I believe it was late 90s, early 2000s. But they were doing testing of medications on because he has like the one of his foundations. Um, and they were assisting in using third world countries as test subjects on medications and vaccines.
Oh
Um,
yeah, sure.
so that's another ding right there, right there, because I mean they weren't even distributing medication that was fully tested and made sure that it was safe, and they were just giving it to poor communities in Africa.
I mean, is this for his like anti-malaria campaign that he's on?
I don't know if it's the malaria campaign, but I know that there were a couple of different drugs. I think one of them was the was AIDS medication. I know that there were a couple other different drugs. It's not just one; it's a whole slew of them that were being given out over there.
So the accusation is that he's using test subjects in these third world countries under the guise of just providing free medical care, but actually it's for the purpose of like medical science. Is that the idea?
Yeah, yeah, essentially.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty shitty. I mean, it's kind of sad to say that you kind of have to be scared when rich people get involved in the process of giving medicine to third world countries.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I mean, um, there's also with Bill Gates the Jeffrey Epstein connection as well,
Mm,
Definitely,
true.
definitely.
and he was known to have visited Epstein even after the original accusations were dropped.
Mm.
Yeah, he definitely had meetings, and he's denied it publicly that like he didn't even know him. However, there's multitudes of pictures and photo evidence and all these kinds of things from parties that he was at with Epstein, and a lot of those actually came from Trump having those pictures and providing those to the major news networks during that time. So so there's a plus one. I'll give it to him. But also the same with a lot of those other politicians as well.
Right.
It's really creepy.
And I
So
guess if we want to cap Bill Gates off, there's the theory that his divorce was just like a tax scheme. Are you aware of that?
I had not heard that. Tell me more.
His divorce with Melinda?
Yeah, his divorce with Melinda was basically just like a way for them to be forced, quote unquote, to sell off like their stock in Microsoft and other things because it's a little more difficult to split certain assets, right? Um, so the, the 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 idea is that maybe he I mean, and then Bezos got divorced around the same time, so the idea is that maybe they were doing some kind of tax fraud, basically, um, trying to avoid some kind of payout by getting divorced, basically, and splitting up their company.
That's very interesting.
Imagine that conversation though in your own relationships. Like, babe, we got to get divorced, otherwise we're gonna have to pay some taxes. Um,
Yeah, we can make so much fucking money on the house.
yeah. Can you see how well that would go over? Um, I imagine lots of immediately sleeping on the couch for trying to have that conversation myself.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that that their relationships are much different than ours.
Oh, for sure. I mean, can you imagine how creepy those relationships really have to be in order to? I mean, let's assume that she also knew that he was friends with Epstein, right?
Sure, I would
Like,
assume that, yes.
I mean, money, if that's the motivation, I mean, really makes people be okay with a bunch of things that they shouldn't be okay with.
Right.
So let's move on to Jeff. So Jeff, who's your least favorite billionaire and why do you dislike them?
It's Bezos.
Bubba Bezos.
Yep. First of all, he's got my name, and that's annoying.
Your name's Bezos? I
Like,
didn't know. I didn't know
no,
that's what your
Jeffrey, obviously. Um, and so I don't know. Like, he is someone who comes up in conversations. Like, I'll be out places, and I'll hear somebody say, "Oh, Jeff, blah 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 blah," or not Jeff. Nobody calls him Jeff, but Jeffrey or Jeffrey Bezos. You know. But like, I will hear his name, and I'll be like, "Huh, what's going on?" And they're not talking about me. So that's a good enough reason to hate him right there.
That's fair.
Um,
That's definitely fair.
but also, I feel like he's much like Musk. He got very rich off of a super obvious concept, that being Amazon, and for Musk it was PayPal. This super obvious idea. Of course, the internet is going to need a place to shop, and whatever. He did it. Um, and then he's just using his money for all these stupid side projects that, like, what's his, is it Blue Origin, or what is his space thing?
Oh, yeah, I think it's called Blue Origin.
It's something,
It's
but
stupid
it's like
enough not to remember it.
it's just
Yeah,
exactly
it's
like
definitely.
it's not SpaceX, like, and that's the whole point. Like, he's got the money to do it, and so it's just like a dick measuring competition to see who can get into space, which is like super ironic that all these billionaires are trying to like run off into space, and we're all just sitting around like cheering it on instead of being like, hold up, why are you leaving with all our fucking loot, you know?
And all our NASA money.
Uh, right, yeah, like, we're gonna need to go to space too, guys. Come on now. But
So, especially with Blue Origin, which is definitely what it's called. He hasn't. I mean, he's successful in it, but it's also not paying for itself. So what's the motivation there, right? Like, what do you think his motivation is? Because it seems weird coming from him.
so that part of it actually kind of makes me like him. Anybody who is willing to sink their fortune into a passion that is clearly not going to pay off, I have got a little bit of respect to. But like, I think it's just the end game for him is to be in the history books as one of the guys that made the, you know space into an industry. Whether or not he profits from it, and I think he will eventually if they keep going. Especially if they pivot from this, stupid, um like, vacationing people to space. What's that called?
But just
Space
Space
tourism?
yeah,
tourism.
space
That's,
tourism.
yeah. So if it wasn't for space tourism, if he would pivot from that into like space mining or space exploration, and I don't know, maybe they do more of the like actual like satellite delivery or whatever than, like, I don't know, Virgin's space program does. But it just seems like, the two of them are just going back and forth trying to figure out who can get the most billionaires into space, and that's just obnoxious. That and Amazon is just running the American economy, the world economy, really. Like, small businesses can't compete. They're going out of business. Even big box businesses are having a hard time competing. I
Well,
mean,
they
what can you
basically
do
just have to
when,
mimic Amazon to survive.
or partner with them? Yeah,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, the other day I got a package from Amazon. It was Newegg's logo on the box.
Oh, so Newegg shipping through Amazon now?
I
That's great.
guess I don't know.
Yeah, so a lot of companies are doing just that. Like they have their own website that they try to sell stuff on, and then they also have an Amazon store, so that Amazon can take a portion of their revenue away from them. I think when it comes to Bezos, I was gonna to try to pivot a little bit. Is the treatment of workers issue,
Right.
because we talked about unions a little bit, and I mean Amazon has been told specifically and is called out as a union buster, a
Right.
union buster company, and it's really so not only are they soaking up and making it more difficult for other companies, but the way that they're doing it is by treating people like shit.
Yeah, for sure. And from what I understand, they have a almost like department that's dedicated to union busting that runs like it. They hire a bunch of like ex spooks, basically, right? They hire a bunch of people from the CIA to work there and drive those union busting efforts. So they basically have like a private CIA within Amazon.
That doesn't seem surprising to me at all.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they would say. I mean, it's been released. They were sending out memos to people saying that if you tried to form a union, we retaliate against you, and they had videos for managers on how to spot if a union is attempting to form, and
Right.
it's just really not good. Especially, and they pay them a fake good wage, right? Like when you have people working in your warehouses, they're like, yeah, we have no problem paying people what they perceive as being a good minimum wage of like $15 or whatever the case may be. But
We just
when
don't let them
you
pee.
yeah, we just won't let you go to the bathroom. But even if we pay you that, we're okay with paying you that because on inflation, the minimum if the minimum wage kept up with inflation, you'd definitely be making well over $20. So we're still paying you the equivalent of 7.50 an hour because inflation's been so bad over the past 20 years that it doesn't matter if we raise you up a little bit because it's not going to affect our margins at all. And so people feel like they're getting something good when they're actually really not getting a good deal. $15 just isn't enough. It's just not enough.
Sure.
Um, I
Well,
mean,
there's
it's
also safety concerns and health concerns working in the Amazon warehouse too that the $15 doesn't really take into account. They're expecting people to work themselves like to the bone for like 3 or 4 years and then have to quit because their back hurts and never get any of the like payouts for health insurance or anything because they have people to shut all that stuff down.
Yeah, they had a couple cases of like older women who would work really hard in the warehouses, and then would something medical would happen to them, or they'd faint or whatever from either exhaustion or dehydration or whatever the case may be. And then when they had to go get medical assistance, they by the time they got back, they would fire them
Right.
for being gone. So what do you
That,
do?
that actually happened to a friend of mine, to her mom. Her mom was a driver for Amazon, and she ended up she was pretty close to retiring, um, and she ended up breaking her arm, and like they laid her off while she was recovering. And well, they didn't lay her off; they put her on leave and told her she'd be able to come back when she was healed up. But when she was finally healed up, like they were doing firings for like the end of like seasonal whatever business, and they just lumped her into that and laid her off. It's
Damn.
so bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's like an increasing number of people whose boss is an app, and normally we think about that like DoorDash and what have you, but Amazon, I think, is like the Amazon warehouse is really a big example of that. Like how automated the um, labor management is there, and like timetables and stuff like that that they have to stick to.
Oh, sure, just the metrics that they have to meet, and it's no wonder that managers end up being monsters because of those metrics that they're told they have to meet or they'll lose their job. It doesn't excuse anyone for behaving the way they do, but it does, like, I don't know, give an explanation, I suppose.
Well, yeah, I mean the manager's put into a position where they can barely do anything else. I mean they probably don't have that good of prospects either. They're probably only making like $3 an hour more than the people working in the warehouse.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and not to mention, I mean, when it comes to those stats, like they have people wear like devices on them that track where they are in the warehouse, how long it takes them to get from one point to another, whether or not they're away from their station going to the restroom, trying to go to the restroom, or whatever the case may be. They're being tracked the entire time. Just the same way that you would track a a bot or machine doing the same work, right? Like they have
Right.
tracking devices on them, like they're cattle, you know.
Right. But I mean, I think that's the end goal, is for them all to be replaced by machines, right? Like,
Sure.
aren't they already doing that? Like, they have mechanical pickers already for those things, so that they can get like the intricate, movement of arms or whatever to be cheap enough to use. I'm sure they'll just have everything being packed by robots too and shipped off and delivered by drone. Like, I'm sure the end goal is just to cut the human portion out of it completely. And like, that sounds like great on one hand, but on the other hand, like, that's a lot of jobs that are just going to be gone.
Hmm.
Right. No, be left to order stuff on Amazon.
Yeah, they'll have no customer base to order anything because they've automated everybody's jobs away. That's the concern,
Yeah,
right?
but if they put every other business out of business, then people have no choice but to buy from them, right?
Yeah, but if they
Like,
can't afford to, that's the flip side of the coin is
it's okay.
who's
That's
left.
what your Amazon approved credit cards for, man.
Ooh, nice. Nice one.
Got to get those
Yeah.
points.
Yeah, everybody's just on affirm payments for the rest of their
I
lives.
owe my soul to the company store, my guy.
Yeah. You get Amazon credits by doing jobs outside of Amazon that they want done. Ugh.
Social Security sponsored by Blue Sky.
Yeah. Social Security is inexplicably linked to the performance of the Blue Sky stock.
Well, Wiggs, who's your least favorite billionaire?
Um, mine, I've got, I don't really have one. I've got a couple. Um,
That's good.
and there's some things that they do that I like, and there's some things I really don't like. And so I have to put them kind of all in the same class. Like I'll mention some names
Okay.
and then put them together, right? So the ones that I have the biggest problem with are Michael Bloomberg, Bill Gates, like you said, Bezos, like Jeff said. I've also got some beef with Musk and Zuckerberg and I have to kind of link them all in together. So let me pick one out, right? So we already kind of talked about Bill Gates, and I agree with everything that was said there. We talked about Bezos, and I agree with just about everything there. Um, so let's talk about Elon a little bit. So while I respect a motivation to buck the government when they deserve to be bucked, um, he also plays this game of I'm going to say ridiculous shit just so that my stock moves. Um,
Sure.
and I feel like that's really terrible to anybody who would be an investor in any way, including his employees. Um, I think that I think he manipulates his stock, and he does it. If you look at the pattern, he really does it purposefully. So you would assume that when he would say something, that the stock would go up. But what happens is he says something and the stock goes down. and then when his quarterly reports comes out, the stock goes back up again. So he can predict. He's making prediction in the stock market, which I think is really really bad for our economy as a whole, especially since he's proving that that anybody could do that. He's
Anybody with the world's biggest social media platform.
right. I mean, Bezos could do it. Bill Gates could do it. Any of them
Sure.
could do it because he's proven that it's effective. The other thing is, so with Musk's space program, yes, he's kind of replacing NASA, and I don't like it. Like Jeff mentioned earlier, I really enjoy the fact that we have a public space program because that's where I don't like corporations taking over what should be the government's responsibility. And that's also when we were talking earlier about like charter schools, right? You're essentially letting corporations take over what should be the responsibility of the government for the public good. Um, and they're making money hand over fist because it's just being given to them.
Yeah, I mean, they're siphoning money out of NASA and using it for something that's probably less efficient than NASA would be.
Yeah. And I don't know. It just and what do you say to kids who want to go to school to learn what you would need to learn to be in a kind of program like that? What you're telling them is that then at that point, not only do they have to learn what they need to learn, but they have to have the experience necessary for someone like Musk to hire them. And it's just not feasible. There's no government program that you could go into and get your feet wet and experience and be part of something bigger. It's really locked down. And so I really hate that. Um, those two things from him.
Sure.
When it comes to Zuck, I mean, I don't like to poke fun at people's like things that they can't control. Um, However, I don't think it's good for somebody who's in charge of a social media company to look like a robot. I don't think I don't like how AI was one of the progenitors of human social media. I don't like it at
Yeah,
all.
he is pretty creepy, and I mean, I think to some degree, like you say, it's something you can't control, but I think to some degree, having that much money almost like inherently brings that out in a way. Maybe if you have those tendencies already.
Yeah, I mean, but if you have that much money, why couldn't you hire somebody to teach you how to smile so that you don't look like a killer robot? Like,
Very true.
I think that along the same lines, it's more along the idea that in order to be a billionaire, you have to be like a literal psychopath. Like
Right.
in order to hoard that much wealth, you have to look at other people like they're less than you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to stomach what they're going through and what you could do to help them, you know? And so that's why, you have like Bezos and Musk and Zuckerberg who are all clearly, suffer from psychopathy of some kind. Like they're clearly not, great people.
Sure.
Um, and I think you just have to be that kind of person to maintain that kind of wealth.
Right. So maybe what he could control in that case was he could have chosen not to be the public face of the company and just run things from behind the scenes. And he didn't make that choice, so I feel like we're entitled to make fun of him for it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Like if anything, I'm saying that these are horrible people. Please make
Right.
fun of them.
Oh,
You
of
know
yeah,
course.
what I
Yeah.
yeah,
mean?
definitely.
Like they're morally bankrupt people. Like every single billionaire, every single one of them,
Yeah,
morally
yeah.
bankrupt.
I mean, I'm trying to think. I don't know of anything business related that I know that Musk has come out and said things like, his employees all have to be like on prem or whatever the case may be. But I don't know if either of them have done anything that goes against their workforce's like health the way that Bezos has. Like even with
I think
Gates.
SpaceX probably does the way that
Ye-
they overwork people,
So I
and
mean, there's
Tesla
Tesla
as well.
Tesla factory workers with Musk, and also with Bezos or with Zuckerberg. There's I was gonna say Zuckerberg. There's all the like Indonesian people who have to like moderate Facebook content. So I'm sure those people have seen some horrible shit on his behalf.
Yeah, for sure. And I was just going to say that I do remember Musk union busting at the Tesla factories. They were thinking about
Oh
unionizing, and he
right, yeah.
busted it. So yes, so he's also one, much like Bezos, to union bust.
Yeah, and those companies, I mean, they hire a lot of like highly paid engineers, obviously, but they also like basically their trick is that they subcontract out anything that's requires uh unfair labor practices, so that then that way they can look really good. This
Yeah,
is
for
another
sure.
company doing on their behalf.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder. Um, I don't know. I mean, so talking about Zuck. Um, I don't know of any specific outside of something like outsourcing people. I'm not aware of anything that's particularly egregious. Outside of something like that. I don't remember hearing anything about like union busting. I don't remember hearing anything about like them having bad benefits or anything. But at the same time, the dude's just creepy. But
Yeah, well, I mean, there's also the fact that like Facebook was involved in a genocide. Do you know about that? Like the Rohingya genocide?
no, please speak.
Yeah, there was a lot of like it's kind of tied up in the same time that it got a little bit overshadowed by um, the fake news stuff surrounding Trump, um, in the sense that it was it was like kind of the same situation, right, where a company bought a bunch of ads uh, to push some sort of political agenda, except in this case it was genocidal propaganda that they use to get people on board with their agenda. Let me look up what country that happened in real quick. Right. So basically, what happened was that there was a genocide in Myanmar against the Rohingya people in 2016 and 2017 that forced more than 800,000 people to flee the country. And Facebook has acknowledged that it was used to foment division and incite offline violence in Myanmar. But they've been like obstructing investigations into exactly what their role, if it was.
Oh, it's so terrible. It's so terrible.
So, I mean, a step beyond union busting.
Yeah, definitely a step beyond for sure. Um, I mean that this all just kind of goes back to Jeff's point about, yeah, sure you can make a mistake, but I mean you got to be honest about how these people have just been corrupted by power and money.
Well, and again, I think that it's mental health issues as well. I mean, it's really clear with Zuckerberg and his like hyper focus on the meta idea, like of changing the name of Facebook to out of his company to Meta, and like just tossing hundreds of millions of dollars down the toilet trying to build out this really like just bad version of what virtual reality could be. That is some like top tier hyper focus going on there. That is clearly a symptom of, some kind of mental health issue of some kind.
So we want to talk about that real quick. So the crazy thing about that program is, so I was listening to Post Malone on Rogan last week, or maybe it was earlier this week, and they were talking directly about that. I guess Post Malone got one of the devices and jumped onto whatever it was, and it was full of children. There were no adults; it was just kids.
Hmm.
Um, which is pretty scary to me. Um, that they have all these kids using the specific program. Like, who knows where they came from, but they've got to be the children of employees for the most part.
Well, they closed down
Yeah.
the Habbo pool, so they have to go somewhere.
Yeah, 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 100%. Um, and but they did have like there was like this over 18-year-old bar or whatever, like as a space there, and there was only one other person in it when he walked in. And so you've also got to wonder about the motivations of the one adult who's on a server with 800 kids or how many ever he said, right? Like that's not a safe environment. If anybody can just get
Sure.
in there and it's mostly just a bunch of children. So, yeah, that's a problem that nobody's talking about.
It's a problem that nobody's talking about for good reason because no one cares about Meta anymore.
Yeah, no one cares about Meta.
Yeah.
It's like I understand why he got so excited about it. Like Ready Player One came out, that was exciting. What a vision for the future of his technological world that he wants to live in, and he wants to be the person to bring that to life. I appreciate that hustle a bit, but not being able to cut your losses is just a sign of hyper focus.
Yeah, there's definitely some mental issues, like you're saying. I mean, it's obvious with just about all of them. Like Gates, he appears in public, but you can tell he's uncomfortable all the time, or at least he was up until about, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago. I don't know what changed. Maybe he's taking psychedelics now. Um, and he's just chill. And he's just chill. But
He used to be. I think he used to be a lot more comfortable in public too when Microsoft was just doing Microsoft's thing. Like he was good talking about that stuff, but him being an independent public persona hasn't gone quite as well.
yeah, and I mean Musk, as much as they're all just as awkward. Um, I mean Musk, when you looking at him and he's trying to speak, he stops, and it's like there's something else going on in his head that he's trying to fight off while he's trying to think of what he wants to think about. Whether or not that's just, maybe he is just super duper smart. Who knows? Maybe he is actually super duper smart, but the awkwardness still comes out. And there's a lot of the stuff that he says that you can tell he thinks is really clever that nobody else thinks is really clever. um, which is also kind of a sign of not being as attached to reality as you think you might normally be.
Yeah, that would be a great twist of irony if he was like actually the smartest person alive, but he's seen as just a clown.
Right. Well, I
Like
mean,
no
we
matter
talked
what he
before.
does, he can't help that.
Yeah, I mean, we talked before about him just being the worst of a different alien race, right? Just sent over, he's their worst. And that doesn't necessarily mean better than us. So, just because they're aliens. And then I mean, just going back to Zuck, I mean, he's so awkward. I mean, when you watch him at the Congress hearings and stuff when they bring him in, he looks kind of jaundiced. Like it's fake skin, like Data on Star Trek, right?
And he's got creepy
And
eyes.
he's got creepy eyes, and his smile is robotic, and so like I can't trust you. You're not human enough for me to trust you, and yeah, it's too much for me. It's too much for me. That being said, what are the dumbest things that these billionaires are doing right now? What's some of the really stupid things that they're doing, or things that we think are stupid?
We've hit on so many already. I mean, metaverse. Um,
I'll go ahead
what
and say it.
else?
I'll go ahead and say
Yes,
it.
go for it.
SpaceX rockets looking like dicks. So he decided that even if a different design might be more aerodynamic, he'd rather have his rocket look like a dick. And
Is that
that
like
that
something
kind of
that was
goes.
like leaked in an internal memo or something?
No, no. I mean, he said it. He said out loud that there were other designs that they had that were more aerodynamic, but he just wanted it to look that way.
Hell yeah.
So
Commit to the bit.
yeah, committing to the bit. And then when you really think about it, so when they did their first like big successful launch, right? He had the Tesla inside the rocket, and then he launched the car out of the rocket like it was jizz. Um, so why? That was that was just a waste of money. um,
Yeah, I think I can point to that as being the exact moment where I knew that SpaceX and Elon Musk in general was just kind of beyond saving. Is when he shot a Tesla into space. I was like,
Yeah,
okay, yeah, this is
that was even before like his like right wing turn too. Like at that point in time, he
yeah,
was still
yeah.
kind of like a you know liberal darling.
hmm And well, here's the thing that I find really crazy about some of these, when it comes to Musk in particular. Um, some of his ideas, and this is happening a lot lately, where you have people who are on the left or what was considered the left 20 years ago, who have the same views that they always had, but the public perception of what it means to be left or right has shifted. Because I think that there's a lot of the views that some of these guys have that were really popular on the left not that long ago, but have been decided that those are no longer things that the left wants to support, and so now they're right. There's definitely right views that they have. I'm not saying that. I mean, so let's talk about tech companies, right? So all of these tech companies were considered leftists 10 years ago.
What do you mean?
So technology, the tech sector has always been dominated by left-leaning individuals, and left-leaning ideologies.
Oh, you mean like Silicon Valley?
Yeah, like Silicon Valley. However, over the past decade, they're starting to become the enemy, and I'm not quite sure why.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's probably because like they were giving some kind of positive vision of the future in a way, right? At least to some people. And then now suddenly we're in the future and it kind of sucks. So people want to take it out on somebody.
I never looked at it like that. That's a really interesting view.
I think there's also the idea that technology was kind of punk rock back in the day, in the sense that it was like, partially unregulated, and people were doing all these big exciting things, and it was people working out of garages, and then the dot-com bubble hit, and it was like, again, people working from their homes, putting together these websites that were doing these big things. And it was like people that were looking to make some money and shape the future of this new technology. And that's like exciting, like youthful energy. And then as that evolved, and Silicon Valley and just tech in general became so like cash rich, like it became such a profitable industry. Basically, what I'm getting to is I think anytime lots and lots of money is involved, anytime it becomes like a truly like corporate viewpoint on a company, like when they start leaning towards, profitability over, expansion and, like research and development, that I think is when it tends to start leaning more right. That fiscally conservative, hey, please don't tax my money, I don't want to pay for public services kind of thing. And I think that is why it's looking more towards the right at the moment is because there's just so much money in it, and when there's that much money, like, of course you don't want to pay taxes. You want to keep your money.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and I think when there's a lot of, honestly, like the early days, it was like there's a lot of free money flying around in a way, right? Like startup capital and all that stuff, and these companies weren't expected to make a profit. And now it's sort of swinging the other direction where they kind of are. And now that they are, they're basically tacking towards the ideology that would help them do that.
Yeah, they're also big enough in time that the government's starting to try to regulate them, and I mean they're a decade behind in trying to do that, and the people who are trying to do it are at least 30 decades too old to understand the technology. But that's a different subject. um, but yeah, I can definitely see that. I agree with those points wholeheartedly. So some other dumb stuff uh, that billionaires are doing. Trying to physically look at the Titanic. And what's
Not even physically look at it.
yeah,
All
they
right,
can't even.
just be in a metal tube as close as possible to the Titanic, and then looking at it on a video.
Looking at it through a bathroom window.
Yeah, it's too dark down there to actually see it, so you're just looking at it through video, which you could definitely have done from safety.
How many
And then
billionaires were actually on that sub?
three. The fourth was the pilot.
Oh, damn.
I mean, but I don't know they're necessarily billionaires. They're millionaires, right? I mean, they're rich enough to be on that sub, but I don't know if there were actually any
Yeah, I don't know
billionaires
whether
on
or
there.
not. I mean, the owner. I believe he was a billionaire, of the owner of the company. And he was on there. But the other guy and his son, I don't think they were billionaires. I just think they, like Jeff said, I think they just had a lot of money. I mean, it was
Yeah, I guess.
$250,000 for their seats, which I mean, feasibly, I mean, you could definitely sell your house if it was that important to you and get a spot. Um, but just the idea of let's try to look or get as close as possible as we can to one of the biggest catastrophes of our civilization, and then not do it properly and have another catastrophe and then be surprised about it.
Yeah.
um
Hopefully the blue sky rockets are made out of carbon fiber too.
yeah, yeah, so dumb. We can put the dumb stamp on that one. And this doesn't surprise me, and it's these reasons why I'm not surprised that orcas are tipping over rich people's boats and eating them.
Yes, the Orca uprising is upon us.
Yeah, we actually considered naming for just a second naming the pod the orca pod. It's
Oh, I didn't even know that.
yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, we had talked about
Yeah,
it.
we talked about it, but it's a little too on the nose and a little too specific. Um,
Yeah, too topical. It's not going to be news here once. Actually, it might continue to be news. Who knows? It depends on what those
Hopefully.
whales are really up to.
Right.
I for one think that they, of course, I think they're aliens. I think
you
that
think orcas
whales.
are aliens?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay, lay this one on me.
Okay. Well, I don't really have any basis for thinking that they're aliens, other than I think that they have spaceships underwater where they are stealing these rudders and other like mechanical things and building mech suits that they will wear on land.
Sick.
Yes, and then they will come and attack. Now, next year I am planning on making a trip out to Big Sur, where I'll be making a sacrifice and letting them know that they have my allegiance. Um,
Right. Okay. That
I
makes
would
sense.
suggest you guys, if not attend with me, send something along as an offering of goodwill. The idea here being that when they do rise from the oceans and attack, they will, much like Passover, they will spare us.
Right. Well,
So
they'll need some compradors among the humans to to enforce their will, right? You can't just.
Well,
They
yeah.
don't want us to exterminate us. They want to rule us, right?
I don't even know if they want to rule us. I think they just want us to stay out of the ocean, and we
Ah,
won't do that.
sure. So then they're
You
going to come
know,
on land to teach us a lesson.
Yeah, we do
right?
kind of need the ocean. Yeah, we're not going to go in the ocean anytime soon.
Well, I mean, we could do it a little bit more sustainably,
Oh,
probably.
well, we definitely could do that, but it's not going to stop us from utilizing it.
I don't
I'm just
know. A
gonna say
mech
that we
suit
can't
might.
do it because if we try, the whales will get us.
I mean,
All
they
right,
can have
do it.
mech suits. I mean, Japan's got a Gundam, so I'm not overly concerned.
Yeah, but imagine a Gundam big enough for a blue whale to pilot it. That's gonna
Yeah.
be like Godzilla-sized mecha. That's so exciting. I can't wait to see that
Well,
rise
how's
from
it
the ocean.
gonna? What's the power source though? Because it can't be
Hydrogen, man, hydrogen power.
just water power.
Right. They sent all
Yeah,
those people who
dude.
invented hydrogen powered cars to the bottom of the sea. The
Hmm.
big oil did that. So now the orcas are going
Oh,
to get them back.
they told them.
Yeah, that sub was actually crushed by the whales. The people on the sub were taken captive, and they are being tortured to find out more information about what's going on up here on land.
Ah.
That's a fact.
Interesting. I wonder about the hydrogen power source with how much salt's in the ocean. Wonder what they're using to
I
filter
mean,
that.
it'll just make their mechs extra strong because they're salty as hell, ready to get revenge.
They're
Hell
just so
yeah.
salty. These orcas are so salty. So so orcas are definitely against the billionaires. They're at least picking on the billionaires first. If we go with Jeff's assumption that they're aliens, right? So what is
And I want to.
right?
Thank you.
Right. Why do you think they're picking out billionaires? Like, why are they're specifically targeting billionaires' yachts?
Because they're the ones with super yachts sailing around the ocean polluting everything. You
Yeah, they'd
know?
be targeting
Like,
me if I had a yacht too.
exactly. Yeah. And, like, you can't rip the rudder off of a cruise ship, you know? But you can
Not yet,
definitely
not
do
till you
it
get a
to a
mech.
super yacht. Right. Not until you have the mech suit. Right.
Maybe the cruise ships will become their mechs somehow.
Ooh.
Like a couple of blue whales could probably fit in one of those, and if they just build legs on it, maybe.
It's just Transformers.
Yeah, sure.
so, so if they're so they definitely like Rab was saying they definitely need some kind of collusion with people on land. Is that do we have? Is there like a group of orcas that have figured out a way to be sustained on land, and they're the ones that are kind of operating everything in the background? Are they the deep state, the orcas?
I would
The deep
assume
Marianas Trench state.
Right.
the deepest state.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, the deepest state of all.
I would assume that there are already humans working with them. You know, they've got to have some way of actually building this stuff, and that's hard to do with flippers. You know, so I assume they've recruited some assistance. Now, it could be that they are not aliens, but they are being assisted by aliens. That's a
Hmm.
possibility. You know, maybe aliens are working with them and like slowly building them up, training the army. These rudder attacks are just like little practice assaults,
Is
you
that why
know?
Congress is so straightforward on
That's why
releasing?
it's non-human entities, you know, non-human intelligence is
Ah.
because it's actually orca intelligence.
Yeah, they didn't say it was non-mammal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and they also said that they didn't want to specify as to whether or not it was a group from outer space or terrestrial.
right,
So,
right.
man, maybe you're onto it. Maybe the orcas are either aliens or they're like the aliens' dogs.
Yeah, I suddenly think maybe we shouldn't release this episode. Maybe I'll edit this whole part out.
Yeah, this may be a little too much for.
This might be a little too real.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that is something an orca cooperator would do.
Ooh, are
That's true.
you
Yeah.
Not release their
Jeff?
secrets.
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Are you a psyop?
I mean, I already said that I'm siding with the whales. I'm making a pilgrimage and a sacrifice. I don't know what more you want from me. I'm pro whale. I, for one, welcome my mechanical orca overlords.
I mean, I guess I've seen. I mean, I guess I've seen what humans can't and can't be. Maybe that's something I need to meditate about and come to a decision
Yeah,
on.
join me. Join us. There are dozens of
One
us.
of us. One of us.
Part of the crew, part of the ship, and that ship is the Titanic.
Oh, so dark. Um. So there's definitely the deep state of these orcas. I mean, how deep does it go? What do you think they're in charge of currently? Like, do we think they've
The
got yeah, do we
orcas?
think they've got the US government in tow? Are they
No. I mean, if they did,
No,
things would
this
be better.
is this is like a guerrilla level assault at this point. This is ground level.
Maybe they've captured some marine biology departments.
so this isn't like Illuminati level yet. This is just
No, we have not reached the level of the Illuminated.
the Illuminate. You gotta drink some of that Illuminate when it gets hot outside.
Yeah. Well, you know me. I'm always drinking that
Yeah, the
Illuminated.
Illuminate is good.
The question is it salty?
It's got electrolytes. It's got what the body needs. All right.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I give it to my house plants, so I don't know how they could live without it.
They're all growing into the shape of pyramids.
Yes. Well, maybe that's
Getting some weird
Oh,
eyes.
guys. What if Atlantis was their headquarters?
What if they stumbled upon Atlantis, which we had abandoned or lost, and they've taken them this long to adapt to the point that they can use our technology?
Graham Hancock was right. There was a lost civilization, and the aliens found it before we did.
Oh, there's absolutely Atlantis is absolutely real.
Oh, for sure.
That shit's
Yeah,
real.
100%. I agree.
If you aren't spending some time exploring your Atlantean wounds, you're not living life.
Yeah,
All
yeah, I
right.
agree with that wholeheartedly. All right, guys. Well, that's been our grudge with billionaires. So
And how orcas will help us fight back.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep, and the Orca revolt. All right, guys. Thank you for joining us today as we talked about billionaires. We hope that you guys join us for our next episode, and we will see you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.